Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Plain Talk, and I'm joined this evening by a guest who, I mean, we always say a man who needs little or no introduction, but this is one person, Fazeer Mohammed. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Philip. Good to be on the show.
I must say it's an honor and a privilege to have you here. People expecting fireworks because we've had some very fireworky kind of interviews on TV6, and well, now you're in social media, so you could talk your talk. How has it been up on your side, all that is going on with the managing of COVID-19 coronavirus since the start, since January to now? What is it like by you?
I think we've been able to manage it quite well. I mean, in the family circle, I think everyone is behaving responsibly, and I'm involved in a family business, as some people may know, and we've been closed down since the Prime Minister gave the advisory. He then changed it a bit, adjusted to make it clear that electrical stores, which is what we operate, will be able to open on the 16th. So we're putting things in place for that. But it's challenging, Philip. I mean, the fact is that we've never experienced this in our lifetimes. None of us would have experienced something like this. That is basically changing the face, not just of Trinidad and Tobago, but the world, health-wise, economy-wise, as many notable economists have said. This is something, the ripples of which will last a lot longer than the COVID-19 pandemic itself. So I think we're coping reasonably well. And I have to say that from a family standpoint, because we are usually conservative anyway, we're not really extravagant and so on. So it's not as if we really wasteful in that sense. So because of that and because of our lifestyle, we find it a lot easier to be disciplined in that regard.
But I'm going to have to ask you because you took a very strong position against the security service police initiative that was started in haste and ended in even more haste. And are you satisfied with the way we've been as a country managing this?
To a certain degree, yes, but also our current crop of politicians, Philip, can't help themselves. Even when they try to be transparent, they're always holding something back because that is how we've had it since 1956, where people feel a sense of entitlement as to they will give you only as much information as they feel is good enough for you. Well, that ain't good enough in 2020. So I think the government would earn a lot more credit if they were willing to be far more transparent and even acknowledge when you mess up, as in this comfort patrol part two kind of thing. I don't know what it is about our politicians, and it's not unique because we have Donald Trump and so on as a classic example, that they can't say we made a mistake, we got things wrong, there was an error of judgment in X, Y, Z. And my concern is that when you hear the official side saying one thing, when you hear other people with their videos and ones that you can be confirmed to be legitimate, showing things to be not what we are hearing from the authorities, and even just the facts of the fact that we have about how many tests, 1,000 tests after about 3 weeks. Didn't the health minister say last week that we're going to be ramping up very soon to 1,000 tests per day? The issue is testing, Philip. If you hear all over the world, they're really getting on about why aren't we doing more testing? Why aren't we doing more testing? Because it's only the testing will tell you how many people are really infected in your country. Do we really believe there's only 107 people are infected in Trinidad and Tobago? So that credibility gap remains. And I think and just this nonsense with the making a hasty decision and then canceling it, and then what you'd have to say is bogus excuses, because one minute you have the Prime Minister saying it's a race issue, you have the National Security Minister saying that, well, somebody tell him that we are all happy with the security situation. That had to be one of the most dirty statements made in a long, long time. But it just goes to show that even the left hand don't know what the right hand doing when it comes to sending out a consistent message.
Well, and I want to say this, the opposition seems to have abandoned ship. So we have nothing trying to keep the government in check at that level. So it's fallen to activists and people like yourself to actually ask questions when things not adding up or when they're contradicting themselves. If the prime minister said that this was a race thing, he should be made to explain that a little better. Because if this a national decision could have been made for security reasons and then cancelled for race reasons, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, again, who do we believe? The Prime Minister saying is race reasons. The National Security Minister saying
Before
is
you go
that
to the national security minister, the prime minister's race remark, he needs to qualify that so we understand who exactly is making this a race issue, who are they making it a race issue with. He's not said. So the public again walked away with everybody's opinion, like with the doubles and the KFC. Were all the restaurants shut down because you didn't want to admit that you did sauce wrong? Or were all the restaurants shut down because you realized that restaurants should not have been open and they're not essential? Which is it? It seems a lot of convenient scripting and not enough fact and truth. None of it adding up.
well, again, you're absolutely right. But the point is, the fact that it doesn't add up is nothing new to our experience. And we, as much as we try, and I give credit to our media fraternity, because sometimes they really try, sometimes they mess up, sometimes they take a million years to ask a simple question, sometimes they confuse themselves with the way they're asking the question and so on. But even when they do ask the question, and it's difficult when you're trying to press a point with a politician, because they have very clever ways of dancing around the issue, and because the other media people getting impatient, they want to ask a question as well. You can't really stick to a particular point with them, and in this case, you need to have that proper one-on-one, whether it's with the prime minister or anybody else, to really drill down into what do you mean. Who are you talking about? Did you make this up? Did you get it on social media? Is it a convenient way to get out of the issue because you have so much egg on your face and that sort of thing? But we are not
What
a
were the
culture.
measurables? What were the measurables? What were the metrics? Show us your work. Show us in the column how you arrived at this as a conclusion. We've been told that since Standard 5. Show us that you didn't just guess this number. You just didn't guess this fact. What prompted you to believe in 24 hours that race was going to create a problem in this country with your national security plan?
And again, the thing is that this is all calculated, huh? Because our politicians, and you mentioned the opposition. I don't know why you would waste your time mentioning the opposition anyway, but you mentioned them for what it's worth.
Constitution calls for an opposition.
Yeah, well, we
They
might as
get
well
a
don't have,
salary. They get in a
because
salary.
because the only difference between the PNM and the UNC is one is red and one is yellow. The problem is that red and yellow, orange, which is the color of your cup that you just put your mouth there. But anyway, that's something else we can deal with at another time. But the issue is that we don't have that culture of insisting on accountability to the point where our politicians feel mandated to do so because they feel they could slide by and they have enough lunatics on their side that will take them into the next government.
And again, not even 24 hours later, they cancel what had to be a major initiative in their minds. I remember when Edmund Dillon put out a release that the Citizens Comfort Patrol was a waste of money, that it provided no service to the country. And it is that you want to reintroduce at a time when you've not yet pressed the army into service. And that's a question people were asking. If we're spending $9 billion a year on national security, half that money going to the army, and the army is sitting idle, why would we need to hire four security firms and pay them $87,000 per patrol? And I asked the commissioner of police, and he smiled. Are your officers getting $87,000 a patrol?
Well, you see, that's the point, Philip. You see, that is why you had, for example, people conveniently ignore your question. And that is the challenge of being an interviewer. They conveniently ignore your question. So for example, yesterday, you had the National Security Minister with a run-up longer than Michael Holding, going on and on and on and on about national security, about soldiers, what they do, conveniently ignoring the fundamental point. I'm basically trying to diffuse or redirect the fundamental issue.
It's called
Deflect,
deflection.
and they do that. And this is why you have so many lawyers in politics, because they're very good at it. They're very clever at it. They're very good at talking around things, and they know what they're doing. They know you know what they're doing. They know the audience knows that they know that you know what they're doing. And it goes on that way. And at the end of the day, are we any wiser? Are we any more aware of what were the circumstances of this decision? Was it just in haste? Was it that they were trying to hope that we forget that it was a comfort patrol from the People's Partnership in 2014, or so many other things? Because it's classic hodgepodge, classic makeup as you go along, because the very media release, as you will recall, Philip, when people saw that information surprisingly on Tuesday afternoon, said in the last paragraph, we're going to look and examine the parameters and adjust accordingly. One, we don't even know what the parameters were in the first place. So you could adjust the content. We don't know what they are. So in other words, as you say, you translate that into ordinary people's English, you make it as you go along.
Were these patrols for Morva, Beetham, Laventille, and Sea Lots, or were they for Goodwood Park, Sinclair, Bayshore, and Gulfview? What was
Well,
the idea?
we were told that they were not for the hotspot areas. That is where people are going to work, and there's going to be for other residential areas. But as Gregory Aboud of Doma said, isn't it that in residential areas that people are at home already, that whole families are at home because the place under lockdown already? So wouldn't it be more prudent to have any extra patrols you're going to have in areas or in business areas or in other areas where you really need to have that sort of extra patrol? So as I said, there are more questions than answers with this whole thing.
The Minister of National Security came back to the people and said, Trinidadians feel safe. And he tried to make it about a success story on his part, that because of the work that they're doing, that Trinidadians are feeling safe. You asked about the Citizens Patrol that was happening under the People's Partnership. The only time they referred to that was after the fact, when they sent out their talkers to say, why y'all didn't raise a fuss under the People's Partnership? A fuss was raised under the People's Partnership as per cost. I remember that was a real fuss that was raised for that. So people were already accustomed to thinking, you are taking public funds to pay private companies while we are already paying MTS. What is MTS doing? What's the TNTech Supplemental Police doing? What's the Army doing? People know that there are people being paid. Now I want to ask you a question. Do you really believe that the media has done a good enough job holding the government's feet to the fire where all of these issues are concerned?
As I said earlier, I think we could do a lot better job, but it's difficult. One, we ask too many convoluted questions. Two, sometimes we seem to be intimidated, and that's why I made the point a couple of days ago that with people like Stuart Young, very articulate, there's this veneer of authority, it borders on arrogance without necessarily being arrogant, and it could intimidate you as a questioner when you ask a question and the way it's turned around back at you to make you almost feel like you're stupid, that you start to backpedal. But that is when you need that confidence to be able to say, Mr. Minister, could I just repeat? My question is
That's
X,
not
Y.
what I asked. I have heard journalists say that. I have heard journalists to presidents of the United States of America say, that's not what I asked, sir. Why don't we have journalists? I see Akash Samaru is making himself a little reputation right now of standing up for himself. I don't know how far it'll go and how long it will last. But why isn't this our normal? Because when I went to see, the first time I heard the big hullabaloo that Akash Samaru has become a real journalist, and I went to see what he asked. What he asked is a normal question, and just, as you say, sticking the respondent to a response.
And you see, the thing is, Philip, is that we are in an era of social media. We are on social media right now. So everything becomes an issue. In the days before this, you had incompetent journalists, you had halfway journalists, you had very good journalists, and so on. But every single thing didn't become blown up into this massive issue. You just, as a journalist, you do your job. You do your job by going to a media conference. And I know it's challenging the way it's done now because of social distancing when you're doing it off Skype or whatever it is, it's difficult to hold them down because they're not there in person to really nail them down as you should. But the thing is that even if it comes across as being persistent, even if it comes across as being almost rude by insisting that the minister answers the question, and you, sir, you or ma'am, you have not answered the question, and I'm asking you again, the question is so. It needs a little bit of belly. And I mean, I don't have that belly anymore, but it needs a little bit of belly.
Have you ever been
To
to post cab?
Sorry?
Have you ever been to a post cabinet briefing?
No, I haven't. I mean, I call it a sweet soap session because that's basically what they're all about. It's about, there's sweet soap in every issue.
Would you take some of those answers that journalists have accepted from politicians if you were in post cab?
But no, I wouldn't take it because the thing is that thankfully I have a little bit of experience and so on. And I think it's important to point out as well that Philip, I'm involved in a family business as well, and I have that cushion. As my brother always reminds me, he said, you could go and cuss everybody you want because you have a job to come back to. It's not the same for the average journalist or some new in the business and so on. They don't want to be seen as confronting people necessarily because they don't know if you could get them in trouble depending on which media house they're working for and so on.
The first time I ever spoke to you in life, it was right after your show had started to get real legs on CNMG, and the People's Partnership was in office, and I think Surod Rambachan was the Minister of Communications, if I'm not wrong, or he had some involvement, and he took umbrage with you, and it caused you to be disconnected from your employment. The first time I spoke to you as a human being, one to the other, I told you, I said, we're organizing a march, brother. We're not letting this happen. And you tell me that it's cool. We're not marching yet. But, and a lot of people who know you as this TV6 superstar may not know that that is your pedigree. But you've been down this road. So when people tell you that they could bust your throat, you could tell them, yes, but look at me, I survive, and you could survive. If you have quality and value, and that's one part of my question. The second part of this is the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago. What is its role if not to protect journalists from victimization from government in cases like you just said?
Well, as in that case, I mean, the thing is that it's a combination of things. One, the experience and the confidence of the journalist to persist and insist and so on. And secondly, the backing of the media house. And this is before we even reach the MAT level, because the Media Association has its role to perform as far as protecting the interests of the media as the voice of the people and the Fifth Estate and whatever else term you want to use to ensure that there's independence and impartiality and so on. But to a certain extent, Philip, we are all in some way or the other compromised by whatever our associations may be business-wise or media affiliation, and who is the financiers and so on. The question is, though, for the journalist, is the journalist sufficiently insulated from that? So that, for example, as what have happened at CNMG, I wasn't insulated because in that interview with Surod Rambachan, he took exception to my reference to Kamala Prasad Bisesa at a UN event where he said she got a standing ovation from the whole General Assembly. And I said, well, I saw the footage and it hardly had anybody there. And then it went on to, well, you seem to have a problem with women in leadership. You have a problem with that.
That's what he said to you. You have a problem with women in leadership, yeah.
And I remember it well because that was a Thursday. The next Friday was a holiday, and the Saturday I was told nobody to come back to morning edition. It was called First Up at the time with Jesse Vento as my co-host. So I was told nobody to turn up, and then I got a host that called people saying, "Boy, you could take them to court now. You could fight them with this one because wrongful dismissal." I say, my position, Philip, and again, I am grateful for my family business and the hard work of my father, my mother, my brother and sisters, my family in support, my wife and daughters. Even my daughter hooked this up, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you right now. She did it properly. But the fact is that I have that support that gives me the confidence to be the person who I am. So if it is that you tell me you don't want me here anymore, okay, I pack up my bag and I go. And at the end of the day, I am confident in what I do. And at the end of the day, it's for the people to judge,
So again, it comes back to this because I've heard this for the past 10 years. And when Raoul Pantin was alive, he said the same thing, that this should not be the obstacle to real journalism in Trinidad and Tobago, that journalists are at risk to victimization to do their job. So they become doormats and then they become people who are available for being led in the other direction. They get chummy with politicians. They look forward to the Christmas party. They look forward to the carnival romp. They look forward to the hamper and the little side contracts that they could get. And it stops being real media for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is not me trying to bash the media, because I want to tell you something. I am somebody who believes that one of the most important institutions in a country is the media. And what I have been fighting for as long as I can remember, is a strong and potent media to keep our government's plural feet to the fire. One of the ways I have suggested that, and I want to know your opinion on this, because you've had to say to me once that it comes down to a money decision, what gets covered as news. And I wanted to ask you this. Now I have a forum to ask you this. Do you not think that there should be arm's length, if not more, between the newsroom and the boardroom?
We would like to think so, Philip. That to me is the ideal. But they're in the real world, especially in a small place like Trinidad and Tobago, there is not that arm's length. I would have to give credit to TV6 because through all of this, not just this latest thing, but different times and so on, when I might have said things that sounded inflammatory, at no time has anyone at the management level of TV6 tell me, boy, you need to tone it down. You need to don't deal with this and so on. But from my own experience, having worked at the Guardian and so on previously, there is influence. There is an encroachment by management on editorial content. You could see it. You could tell how newspapers are slanted, how media are slanted, how certain radio stations or television stations report certain things. Ideally, you would like there to be that arm's length where no one at a management level, unless you are compromising the ethics of the business and so on, where no one, no managing director, no CEO could come into a newsroom and tell people what to do, how to do their jobs. You could probably advise that based on the way you're reporting the story, you can make us liable to legal action. You could do so, something like that. Or maybe there doesn't appear to be balance to a certain story, but that has to come, pass that to the editor-in-chief, who will then pass it on, and if he or she sees validity in it. But you can't have a situation, which I have experienced myself in my time previously in other media houses, where some fly-by-night advertising executive or some clown who happens to have a big office in front feel they could just walk in and tell you what to do in your editorial work.
And you see, and I want to say, as somebody who has felt victimized by media, now I know that my approach is very strong and I know it's hard to deal with. Fazeer, the couple interviews that I have gotten with you have gone viral. People treat it like must-see TV because you give me 15 minutes and the show runs for 21 minutes and there's not a space of silence between us for the full run. And people consider that a real exchange because you have the ebb and the flow, but nobody's there to entertain each other. We have a role, we each have a role. You have your role, and I have my role. But as somebody who's been victimized because there are politicians like David Abdullah, I could use him as an example. He seems to have a pass for the TV6 door or CNC3. And I know that in other jurisdictions and in countries that want to consider themselves first world, there's a rule called equal time. And if you are credible enough that you can influence the narrative in any way, you should be given equal time so that the public is informed as to choice and that media is not supposed to be controlling what the public gets access to as its political options. But that's not the
I hear
case
you on
here.
that. Okay, I hear you on that. But let's take it a step further. Now, Philip Alexander, the person that you are, the comments that you make, the way you say it, and so on. The fact, and let's not avoid the fact as well that there are legal matters in which you are involved and so on. Now, think of it from a management side. Am I going to bring someone on who will certainly be very watchable, very listenable, but is quite likely to say something that could attract legal action? And next thing you know, I am tied up. Philip, let me tell you personally, all you want to shut me up? Bring a lawyer who has that kind of intimidating. I am terrified of lawyers. I got one within months of me starting to work at TV6. We got a pre-action protocol letter, and I couldn't sleep for days because of that. I am terrified of lawyers, and therefore it's not my decision, it's not my call. But I know that if, for example, there's a tendency of Philip Edward Alexander to say things that could be seen as either libelous or slanderous or whatever the term is, and therefore attract legal action, why would I want to put him on here?
Fazeer, prior to me becoming the political leader of a political party, I was on TV6, CNMG, and CNC3 47 times. And I was not the leader of nothing. I was there as somebody contributing to the national conversation 47 times. I was published in the Guardian, the Express, and the Newsday thousands of times. There were times when the Guardian put me as the center story twice in 1 week. I did a video to show Trinidadians because my mother saved every article that was ever published by her pretty son. And when I brought it and I spread it out and I showed Trinidad and Tobago, look. So I was on 91.1 from 6 to 10 every morning for about 2 years. I had a Sunday morning show. Daniel Francois was my producer. We did shows on the attempted coup. We had all the ministers and everybody. At no time in any of those times was I ever somebody that you could have considered somebody that would have attracted a defamation lawsuit. I have had 5 defamation lawsuits since I have become a political leader. I've been threatened with 21 more. I have now a file that I could use to hold up my shaking table that just has pre-action protocol letters in them. And it is because politicians, as you said earlier, politicians don't want the truth out. Politicians do not want you to say that Trinidad and Tobago is 58 years old, and instead of us having $1 trillion in our Heritage and Stabilization Fund, we have none. And if we have none, and we've passed $3 trillion through this country, and there are people in the oil industry who could tell us that $3 trillion that you've seen, that you've passed through your country, that is joke to the money that your country should have. You should have money that would make Dubai shame. Norway has $1 trillion in their Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Norway owns 1.5% of every major stock in the world. Norway's Heritage and Stabilization Fund earns them 100 billion TT every year. We don't have that. We have a rogues gallery that we could talk about Malcolm Jones now that he's dead. Thank God they can't sue you from the grave. We could talk about Malcolm Jones and gas liquids, and we can't mention Ken Julian or Conrad Enel yet. They're still alive and they're walking around the earth. Hafiz Karamat you could talk about with Desalcott in a country that gets 10,000 times the rain that we could ever use in this country. We bought a desalination plant. They should laugh at us in the world. How
Well,
do
the thing
you?
is,
Let me just say,
go ahead.
there is a line between what you do and what I do. And I had to realize that, listen, it's threat to victimization, character assassination, threat to your life. If you're going into this thing, brother, you can't go halfway. You can't go with 1 foot on the shore and 1 foot in the sea. Fazeer, there have been lawsuits leveled at me that the people who leveled the lawsuits, when it came in front of a judge, the judge asked, who's the lawyer who prepared this? How is this defamation? You're wasting my time. And they've had to abandon ship and go their way. I lost one matter. And like with everything else, the first time you stand up in front of a wicket, hold a bat and face a ball, you might lose your stump if the bowler good, if you never hold a bat before. Now I am a different animal and I've been conditioned to understand. So the first couple times I too didn't sleep at night, but now I have pre-action protocol and I just play with the rest. I just play to the rest. But you understand what I'm trying to say? Talk your
Yeah,
talk.
no, I hear you on that. But Philip, I think this discussion that we're having and talking about speaking truth to power and so on.
Frank, be frank, be
Yeah.
frank.
Okay, and be frank and whatever.
No,
What
I mean
difference has it?
you in this. Be frank,
Um,
talk.
yeah. What difference has it made to us as a society? All that you would have done in highlighting issues and so on, all the different types of advocacy, all that others would have done. Is it that it really makes a difference? Or is it just
Yeah,
good entertainment that people could
no,
forward it and share it and so on? Is it no,
consider.
no, Philip, is it really making a difference to the extent that we actually believe that there's an alternative to governance in Trinidad and Tobago beyond the red and yellow?
Trinidad is looking for, and I am telling you
You
this, the
answer my
40.
question. I ask you the question. You answer me answering the
I answered
question.
the question,
You know,
I
like
answered.
Stuart coming off a long run.
Not at all. This is a very short run because I want to tell you the question, the answer for the question in the question. The 40% of the people who don't vote, they're critical to the conversation now. They've been sitting idly by and doing nothing while Trinidad has been circling the drain. You ask a question if we think that we can get past red and yellow. More importantly, can we wake up those who neither red nor yellow? And that's the mission. But to answer your question that you just asked, Trinidad looking for the assembly of the Avengers. You know what they're gonna say when this show done? What you think, boy? Fazeer coming on board PEP, and let me tell you something, we will let that run, because brother is an icon and you have your following. At the end of the day, Fazeer, there are a lot of good people in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think Trinidadians are waking up to the stupidity and the ignorance of voting race and getting nothing in exchange.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It sounds good because just because of social media, everybody has a voice now. I remember 1986, as I'm sure you do. 1986 was the first time I could vote. I was 21 years old at the time. And the PNM were voted out. I voted NAR because I felt that that was the way for the country to move forward, to move beyond race. It turned out that Robbie and Pandey didn't get along for whatever reason. Pandey picked up he marbles and went home. The whole thing crashed. Then the NAR disintegrated, and we are where we are. So the thing is, it boggles my mind, Philip, that people who are well educated, people who are filthy rich, people who you would think would be independent of political affiliation, are so tied to either political affiliation or ethnic affiliation. You know how many people, Philip, because I happen to be of Indian descent and have straight hair, feel comfortable talking to me about these Creole and them, and these Chinese and them, and these so and so and them, because they think that I would understand their line of
But we
disgusting.
naturally predisposed to racist bullshit because that's Trinidad and Tobago too.
Yeah, but that's not acceptable, Philip. That is not
It's
acceptable.
not acceptable, but I'm not saying it's acceptable. But I'm saying that's why it happened. That's why we've had 58 years of exchange that benefited us to nothing.
But the point is, what I'm asking, the reason I'm asking, how do you as an individual, someone who has either built up an empire, built a business, or turn yourself into a fantastic success story, still anchor yourself on racial prejudice? How do you do that?
I ask that question by my still being involved in politics. I ask that question every hour of every day. I see people, I meet people whose justification, you know what they do? They rationalize their involvement. And I remember Wayne Dyer, I'll never forget, he said, for you to rationalize, you have to tell yourself rational lies. And that's what they do. They tell themselves rational lies. They tell themselves, if I don't vote for Kamala, Rowley will eat the whole country. And 4 years into the next Kamala, if I don't vote for whoever leading the PNM, Kamla will eat the whole country. And they've done that two-step every election since after the attempted coup. But still, for all the people who are desperately hoping that we could find our way out of this, I have to ask you, with all that you've seen, with all that you've experienced, you've spoken to more people in this country than just about anybody. Are you saying then that we do not have an obligation to try?
Yes, no, no. Yeah, we have an obligation to try. But you say it's all these people who are desperately hoping. Well, I would pull out the desperate because I don't think we're desperate enough as yet. Because if we were really desperate, people would be out there, not necessarily campaigning or whatever, but you would have far less tolerance for the dotishness that we get from government and the dotishness that they get from opposition, that people would dismiss them out of hand because the track record shows that neither the red nor the yellow can take this country forward. You said desperately hoping. There's no desperation in Trinidad and Tobago. The only desperation right now is to see if they can manage a house party this weekend and not get caught by Gary. That is the desperation. The desperation, Philip Alexander, is with all these mass bans and whatever, wondering, is this going to jeopardize Carnival 2021 and the band launchings and so on? If you really want to get people's attention in Trinidad and Tobago, Philip Edward Alexander, raise the issue about whether or not we'll have Carnival 2021. Everybody will be watching you.
Fazeer, everything that you're saying, nobody cannot discount it, but always you sound jaded. And I try to bring hope to the conversation. I try to say, and I remember, since we formed the Progressive Empowerment Party, I told people there are two videos of me being interviewed by Fazeer that you need to see. The first one, when the party was new, when Fazeer just dismissed us out, the house members say, come now, what are you doing? We're doing Philip Alexander, you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time, you just entertainment. You're coming on my show in the morning and people entertain. And by the next show, you said to me that my wife is your supporter because she saw you solve a problem in Maracas Beach. You remember that?
Yes, and she still is a supporter, by the way. She finds me a little too harsh, but she's still a supporter.
Your wife is a very intelligent woman, and tell her for me that I don't want to be harsh. This harshness, boy Fazeer, is to get people to see. I remember when you asked me on another of your interviews, you said before we went to break, Philip Alexander, you referred to the Prime Minister as a jackass. Remember that? How do you justify calling him a jackass? I said, Fazeer, at some point the entire nation will consider. But listen, the first couple times I spoke like that, my mother would call me and tell me her friends are complaining to her about me, and she calling to buff me. I'm a real family man, I see. I'm a real family man. And my mother would buff me, and I try to explain to my mother, just trying to get people to wake up. And you remember this guy, Christopher Phillip, who died on the General Hospital lawn?
Yes.
They had filmed him crawling around. My mother called me that afternoon in tears. And at that point in time, I used to do a live video every night at 8 o'clock. And my mother called me she was broken down and she was in tears. And she said, when you do your show tonight, you make sure that jackass know. And from that day, I started to tell people, when the wolf reach your door, you will understand how I feel. Was I on with you, or did I watch you when you spoke about when the police in with a mistaken identity distressed your family, and you felt the powerlessness of that? Remember that time, that moment? Not trying to put on the spot. I don't, and I'm not. I'm just saying.
No.
But it is in that moment. Fazeer, last year my sister died. 1 year ago now. When she got to the hospital, and the doctor that she was allowed to be treated by had the worst bedside manner I have ever encountered. My niece, her daughter, my now dead sister, her daughter is a fourth year, should be fifth year medical student, but because of COVID-19, she's not. So we'll have no interns. And I don't hear nobody talk about that on the news or anywhere. We will have no interns after August. As another thing, that doctor just he just called her death, called her time of death. And now granted, she's a medical student, but she's asking him questions because she's watching her mother and he's calling her time of death. And he looked at her and he said, there's nothing you could do for her. She's dead. And I'm thinking, and I know this for a fact, that there are first world countries where you can ask for a mortality conference and have the actions of the doctor investigated if you believe that the doctor was in any way culpable in your loved one's death. I don't even know who, and I just had to, a year has passed already. We buried her, a year has passed. That same doctor, 1 month later, he dropped dead. And this is Trinidad and Tobago. And I think that we let it go because he dropped dead. But if you took your loved one tonight to a hospital when they were critically ill and there was no way for them to be treated with at least the respect that you think that you should get for your loved one, who do you call?
Because, Philip, the professionals in Trinidad and Tobago have grown accustomed for decades. I remember Ian R. Robinson talking about that the professional classes have failed this nation, that they close ranks to protect one another. You remember when I think it was Mr. Victor Hart of the Transparency Institute made the same point, that the professionals, the lawyers, the doctors, and so on, they close ranks to cover each other's backsides when the time comes. Because if you had to take up action, don't you have to get a lawyer? Don't you have to pursue it through this medical council or whichever council or whatever? And they close ranks to frustrate you. You don't have the time, you don't have the resources, you have your family to feed, you have work to do. You can't pursue it in the way that you would like to in a proper country. So that is the situation. But to answer your question about having hope and not sounding jaded, I actually have no choice but to have hope now, because me and my wife, we are now grandparents. We have one grandson who is 2 years old. His name is Musa, which is Moses, which is appropriate at this time of Easter and so on. Old Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille and that kind of thing.
Congratulations.
And we have another grandson who is almost 2 months. His name is Dawood, which is David. So if for nothing else, Philip Alexander, to try my best that they, when they grow up, will say that at least in the Trinidad and Tobago of 2040, 2050 or whatever, maybe when we are dead and gone, that they could say that they are living in a country where they feel that merit counts. Not that they want a golden spoon or a silver spoon or favors, but that merit counts and that accountability, transparency, integrity are the anchors of our nation, and that therefore they can feel one, safe and secure in a lawful nation, law-abiding nation, and they could feel they could pursue whatever they choose to pursue. That to me is the energy that keeps me going to try to make a difference.
You sound like a politician.
Well, that is. I didn't come on the show to be insulted, Philip. I didn't come on the show to be insulted.
Listen to me, Listen, I tell people that all the time, don't call me a politician, but Fazeer, how do we get there for Musa and Dawood? How do we get there for them if we don't fix the politics?
But that's it. First and foremost, we have to decide. Ask ourselves, if we talk about we are rational, logical, intelligent people. We pass exams, we come first in the world, and this, that, and the other, and so on. Can you tell me that the PNM, either 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 10 years ago, today, 10 years to come, 5 years, are they going to be any different from the PNM that we've known? The UNC, whether they were the DLP, the ULF, the UNC now, maybe some other name or whatever, are they any different from what we've known all the years? Are they going to be any different? And if you can tell yourself yes, well, then you are delusional. And if you can tell yourself no, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And don't get vexed with me, don't get vexed with me. But at the local government elections, after years of spoiling my ballot, I used to spoil my ballot. I used to stamp everybody for about 3 or 4 elections in a row. And people say, well, you are a real idiot. Why are you going into a booth, John, to spoil your ballot? I said, that's my right. I will spoil my ballot because I want to make a statement even if nobody take it on. Now, as a local government election, I voted MSJ because there was an MSJ representative in my area. I voted MSJ. People say, again, you waste your vote. Why have I wasted my vote? I am entitled to vote for whoever I want to. I see no future in either the PNM or the UNC. And I feel that the MSJ, for what it's worth, is the only option that I could exercise in my area. So the thing is, at the end of the day, we have to decide, rather than just be complaining or going on various channels and whatever and so on, making noise, which is fine. People have a right to espouse their issues and so on. But what are you prepared to do about it in a real sense?
I staying quiet because you're saying my words. You're using my words. You're reading straight from my script, so I don't know what to say. Fazeer, that's exactly every person who know the Progressive Empowerment Party or what we stand for, what we've been fighting for, everything that you've just said in both of those last two rants, all they say on the train is Fazeer is a pepper. You don't know that you're a pepper, but the ideology and the philosophy that you espouse, all the practical programs and policies that you want for your country, that's what we espouse. Now, I didn't bring you here to politic, so I'm not gonna put you any further on the spot, boss. But I'm telling you,
No,
you're
you're
gonna
not
have
putting myself. Feel
you're
free
gonna
to
have
ask
to
me
have
whatever
the
you want to ask me.
conversation with the family. At some point, you're gonna wake up one morning and you're gonna tell yourself, I am going to get into politics and I'm going to get involved. And I want to tell you tonight, there is a space and a place for Fazeer Mohammed in the Progressive Empowerment Party. So let's move on. Let's move on from there. So I want to ask you
Yes,
now,
sure.
do you see a future for, because we had a conversation almost 15 years ago, and tonight when I was getting ready for this show, I got vexed that I didn't bet you money because you told me social media is going to be a fad. Remember, we've been fighting that fight for
Yeah,
a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you think that traditional media is going to survive what social media now represents in Trinidad
Definitely.
and Tobago?
Definitely, I'll tell you why. Especially now, with all of the fake news and the bogus information at a time when people need hard, reliable, solid information. Look at the numbers, Philip. The BBC, the conservative government of Boris Johnson, have been trying to disembowel the BBC because they see the BBC as a bunch of left-wing liberals, and they've tried to emaciate. You may be aware that part of the BBC, they're funded by citizens. If you have a radio, if you have a TV, whatever in your house, you have to
Yeah,
pay a license fee. And the conservative government have tried to remove that. They're trying to basically cut the BBC in half. Well, since this COVID-19, the BBC's audience across all platforms has gone up by a minimum of 50%. And
everybody. Because you can't use this. This is
no, no, no,
unprecedented.
no,
This is
no,
unheard.
wait, Philip. Wait, let me tell you. Mainstream media, the ones that are seen as credible sources of information, are the ones that are making the greatest strides in this environment. You know why? Because my concern is that in Trinidad, we spend too much time reporting on what social media is reporting. Journalists need to do their jobs and report and track down and follow their own stories. What goes viral is not necessarily news, right? What goes viral goes viral. It doesn't automatically mean it's news. And I think journalists have a job to do. And that's why I'm saying, in response to your question, absolutely yes. That
And yet,
especially,
Rhoda Barrett, who is paid by National Lotteries Control Board to be a PNM spokesperson, gets invited to postcard and press conferences. What media is Rhoda Barrett?
well, again, your PNM looks after PNM. What you expect? What
But
you
I asked
really
you the
expect?
question about Trinidad and Tobago. You brought up BBC. I want to tell you Al Jazeera, Fox, MSNBC. Everybody's enjoying a renaissance right now, and they all of their numbers are up because of the fear factor. But in 2 weeks,
Right, okay,
3 weeks, a month,
but yeah,
when
but that's
COVID
it, Philip.
19 is over, when it is over, and people are not trapped in their houses with nothing to do but watch the idiot box, What's going to happen to those numbers?
But then that is up to traditional media to configure themselves to take advantage of this. And the thing is, you're saying when COVID is over. When you think COVID is going to be over, Philip? If you really look at it, right now there's a second wave coming through China and Japan. Over the last 24 hours, Japan announced their highest number of infections since they started in January of this year. COVID-19 is going to be with us until they get a vaccine. I spoke to a
Love,
virologist. I
I
spoke
love.
to her, and she said she's from Tobago, but from Argyle and Tobago, but she's based in the USA. She said she doesn't see a vaccine anywhere on the horizon for at least the next 12 months and possibly the next 5 to 7 years that will work properly.
Fazeer
COVID,
Mohammed, all of our
yes.
COVID-19 cases in Trinidad and Tobago came from temperate climates. The temperate climates is who have COVID-19. They came here to incubate. Africa and the Caribbean, South America, not supposed to have COVID-19. If you look at the numbers, Africa, the entire continent must be have 300 cases. This second
Yeah, but
wave,
you
we're
no,
talking
but you
about
believe that, Philip? No, seriously, Philip, you really
the
believe
information that we get in.
continent of Africa, that is all they have? It does not tell you there is
No, no,
massive
wait,
reporting and
all
no
right.
testing?
They have two types of cases. Low testing, yes. But when you go on worldodometers.com and you see 1,603,428 cases, people panic at that number and they don't scroll and look to the right below that number in smaller print. It says active cases out of the 1,603,408, 452,000 cases are closed. And of those 452,154 cases that are closed, 356,000 people have gotten better and gone home. 95,714 have died. Of the remaining 1,151,274 cases, 1,102,149 are mild. And the problem with COVID-19 is that if you draw the ticket that you have secondary ailments, pre-existing conditions, you're old, your lungs compromised, and you draw a COVID-19 card, there's a good chance that you will die. But the majority of people in Italy and Spain who died were above the age of 80. 99% of them in two countries where the top 5 causes of death is heart disease from oxygen deprivation, COPD, and lung cancer. You have to understand these things. So when they panicked the world, of all the people who have died on the planet, 50% came from Spain, Italy, and France. That is an insane amount of numbers. You mentioned earlier, testing is the most important thing. Germany, who's in between all of them, Germany has a similar amount of cases as Italy, but it has 10% or less the deaths because they've done 5 times the testing. The issue where coronavirus is concerned is if people get a severe case, because 99% will get coronavirus and it be mild, some would have it and never know. They wouldn't even know they had it. That's the vast majority. But you see that small percentage that get it severe, the solution for them is ventilation and fast. So the world is ramping up ventilation production. The vacuum cleaner company Dyson is trying to put out 10,000. You know this, right? You know, you have all this information.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to at some point get to a point where we're putting things in place where you don't shut down the whole country, but you shut down those who are at risk. And you make sure that nobody is taking COVID-19 home by them as we're doing now. And you maintain masks, and you maintain gloves, and you maintain sanitization. But this is a SARS part 2, and this is a coronavirus, and we're dealing with coronavirus since the Spanish flu 100 years ago that killed 50 to 100 million people. We're not even in the same game, much less the same ballpark. And the amount of minds that are working on a vaccine to shut this down, it is only a matter of time. Only, and I'm only saying that to you because a coronavirus is not something new to us in the world. So I am saying to you, I readily expect that within the next month, we are going to have to start a transition in the world back to some kind of normalcy. Because if we don't, global economies will collapse. And that will kill people.
Okay, let's just say let's say we disagree on how long this is going to be. You say revert to normalcy. You really believe, Philip Alexander, that Trinidad and Tobago could return to the normal, that we continue to be normal? Shouldn't this be the opportunity? The opportunity. You say, as you said it, we'd return to some level of normalcy. I am
Our
telling
normal
you.
was never normal, Fazeer.
Right, but Trinidad and Tobago, if we don't realize it now, as far as from the health perspective, with our epidemic of NCDs and so on, people vulnerable to COVID, even if we say COVID is exaggerated, the thing is that is this going to be the trigger for us after this is over, or even as it is transitioning to a manageable level? Are we going to be able to now change the way we do things to govern this country
Was
in the way that it could be far more effective moving forward?
when I say normalcy, I talking about build back an economy where people could pay their rent, put food on the table. If you're talking about changing the way Trinidadians
But
do
then you're not
business,
talking about
no.
Trinidad and Tobago, Philip
No, no, no,
Alexander,
no,
because if you're saying
no.
return to our level of normalcy, that is not Trinidad and Tobago's kind of
I'm talking
normalcy.
about our normalcy as we know it. I talk about open for business. This is a country that almost riot when you shut down KFC. But our top three causes of death is coronary heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. That's our three causes of death. Top three that make up 21%, 41, 50% of our deaths. Trinidad has the highest cases of heart disease and diabetes in the Western world. Nobody's talking about these things at any level of government prior to COVID 19. Are you suggesting to me that we are going to be hyper aware of our fragility and treat our lives differently and start to eat more broccoli and Brussels sprouts?
Well, broccoli and Brussels sprouts shouldn't be on the shelves. Eat bhaji, eat pak choy, eat all. Guava has more vitamins in it than 1,000 apples. The point I'm making to you, Philip Alexander, is that if it is that you want to return to a level of normalcy, that normal has to be with the understanding that we cannot, as a society, continue to live the way we have lived for 60 years, both for health reasons, both for economic reasons, for political reasons, because we are doomed if we keep doing it that way.
And again, it sounded like a perfect, that's a stump speech. They call that a stump speech in a political meeting. Boss man, we're coming to the end of the hour and I know you have a lot of things to do. Give us your closing comments. Take as much time as you need.
Well, basically, it's a privilege to be on the show. It was interesting to be interviewed instead of being the interviewer, as per usual. And it really is something that I hope beyond the likes and the forwards and how many people see and how popular it was or not popular or whatever it is, that we will wake up as a society in the same way that I have woken up eventually to the realization that I have a responsibility to my family, my family circle, but also to those who will outlive me, to those who will outlive me, not just in my immediate family, but in the wider society, to at least go down on the record to say that when they're standing up by my grave, they will say, at least he tried. At least he tried to do
Fine.
something to make it a place. Yeah, at least he tried.
Boss man, people will think you literally stole my book because that's my reason for doing what I do. Fazeer, I tell you, I told you the start, I tell you the end. It was an honor and a privilege, my friend. You are somebody that I have the greatest respect for, and keep doing what you're doing. Thanks a lot for joining me tonight.
Thanks very much. My pleasure once again.
And yeah, well, you could see the quality of that conversation is the level of conversation we need to get to where we are, where we want if we could change this country. And I mean, I am so playing with him a little bit and I'm calling him a politician, but he's sounding like a politician. And if you're listening to him, everything that he's saying, he's spot on and he's correct, but he's been spot on and correct for a long time. He's just been spot on and correct from the side of the conversation about pointing out just what's wrong. Now Fazeer is willing to get to the conversation. He says he's willing to try to see what he could do to fix it. And that to me, as so many more good people get themselves to that place where all they want is a better Trinidad and Tobago, and they want to see what they could do to try with whatever remaining life they have to fix it, you all know. That's my sole reason for all the jam I take in this politics, all the pressure. I tell people all the time, I am a happy, content, peaceful man. All of my pressure, all of my problems, politics. It comes with this. Every fight, every argument, every disagreement, politics. Outside of politics, I am the, listen now, when Marshall sang, I am the happiest man alive, I said, that's my anthem. If I wasn't in this, I am not a greedy person, I'm not a flashy person. And I learned a long time ago that contentment is the pathway to peace. Fazeer said something just now when they're standing on your grave, and I agree with him. I agree with him 100%. The Chinese say, if the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the next best time is now. The tree of good politics, the tree of real leadership, the tree of a better country is going to come when all of the good people, we don't have to agree on everything, but we just have to agree on the important things. And if we get together to do this together, we could make this the better country it was always meant to be. It's still not too late. It's still not too late. The sun could rise on Trinidad and Tobago. There could be a better day. The grey skies could clear. We could come together as one people under one flag where it matters. Where it matters. Celebrate your heritage. Celebrate your race. Celebrate the ship that you come on or where your family originated. Have your culture, but integrate it so that all of us could come and share the way we used to be. That's how I grew up in Woodbrook. Anyway, it was an enjoyable conversation for me. Tomorrow evening, we have Rudal Munilal as the guest on Plain Talk at 8 p.m. So you're not going to want to miss that. And on Monday, we have a potential guest. I am waiting for her to commit. But if we get her, I think that you will realize, bookended with a UNC Munilal and what people will consider a PNM, but you will start to hear more centrist, all of us get together, fix this country together, the whole country, all of us, the best people, the brightest people, put aside those who in it just for their greed and feathering their own nest. They've had 58 years. It's time for the good and decent people now to have their say. Tomorrow night, I am going to ask Rudal Munilal about the silence of the opposition, the almost abandonment. I'm telegraphing that to him. Because we can't continue this way, we're going to end up in a crisis. We're almost there. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.